Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stuff I Find Interesting, episode 65. That was Matthew May with a dark pop beat. That beat is free to use if you so desire. So, like every episode that I do, I sort of recap stuff I talked about last time because there's always spillover. But, before I do that, in case this is your first time, my name is Laura. I talk about stuff I find interesting. That's it. I live in New York. I live a pretty boring, normal life. So, now my past is a whole other story. But we don't talk about that here. We're going to stick to, let's do some archaeology. So I was totally blown away, and I'm sure you were too, by the 476,000-year-old structure, which was discovered. It's thought to be the oldest known structure in the world that's been worked. And by worked, it means it's that human hands took it, improved upon it in some way for some reason, and it became a thing, a barrel, a shed, who knows. Let's listen to this guy talk about it for a minute. I'm just completely blown away.
In 2019, a team of researchers working in the far north of Zambia, at the site of Kalambo Falls, made an unexpected archaeological discovery. They found wood preserved underneath the river, which would then turn out to be almost 500,000 years old. Not just any old wood that had been worked by humans, including the remains of what looks to be the earliest structure known in the world.
500,000 years old. People were building structures. I feel like there's a whole bunch of history that we just don't know about. Anybody else feel that way? Last time we were talking about nuclear weapons accidents. Specifically, we were talking about Mapimi, the place in Mexico, also known as the Zone of Silence. And a nuclear weapon crashed there, and we had to, go get it. But anyway, Broken Arrows, nuclear weapons accidents. Since 1950, there have been 32 nuclear weapon accidents known as broken arrows. A broken arrow is defined as an unexpected event involving nuclear weapons that result in the accidental launching, firing, detonating, or loss of the weapon. To date, 6 nuclear weapons have been lost and never recovered. So there's 6 nuclear weapons out there somewhere, with the first one starting in 1950, February 13th, and the most recent one being that we know of. A Russian submarine sunk, and there were possibly nuclear weapons on it. But it's kind of crazy that there's been 32 of these incidents, or maybe it's crazy that there hasn't been more. I'm not sure. It just seemed kind of like wow. This was in January 17th, 1966. The B-52 and the KC-135 collided during a routine high-altitude air refueling operation. Both aircraft crashed near Palomares, Spain. 4 of the 11 crew members survived. The B-52 carried 4 nuclear weapons. 1 was recovered on the ground. 1 was recovered from the sea on April 7th after extensive search and recovery efforts. 2 of the weapons' high explosive materials exploded on impact with the ground, releasing some radioactive materials. Approximately 1,400 tons of slightly contaminated soil and vegetation were removed to the United States for storage at an approved site. Just feels like there's all this stuff that goes on behind the scenes that we just don't even know about. Last time, 3 weeks ago? Yeah, it had to be 3 weeks ago because I got really sick, and that's why I didn't do last week or the week before, because I was super duper duper sick, and then my guy got super duper sick. It just really sucked. You can still hear it in my chest, right? So, last time we were talking about an orphanage. You don't need to know anything, except the place we were talking about was called Molochansk. And when I was looking for more information about that particular area, I came across this person who was able to trace their lineage and their peoples back to this place, Molochensk. And we have some pictures. Should be able to scroll through, no? Here. So these are long lost relatives that were discovered on this trip. This was a house that presumably one of them lived in. These pictures are incredible. But I love old pictures. It's like one of my things. Look at this little girl smiling. So this would be modern day. This building is like what I wouldn't give to live there. I mean, redone, of course, with all the windows and the fancy flourishes on it. And then you've got this dilapidated barn-like thing sort of glued to the front. I should actually, you know what? I should come back to this because this building is interesting enough on its own, I think. Don't you think? I think. So I thought that was something that was pretty wild. I know I have family that comes from Sicily, like a small village, but beyond that, I don't know. I know I have a great something who came from Scotland, and a great something that came from England. I'm pretty normal. I'm like most kind of Americans in this area. Nothing special. Okay, so we've looked at pictures of Molochensk. Now, Molochensk is heavily Mennonite. It has a population of 6,327. It's located on the Molokno River in Zaporozhye Oblast and administered by the Topmek Municipal Council. So it was founded by German Mennonites who came there to escape persecution, which is kind of interesting. Archaeologists have discovered many Kurhans from the Bronze Age, Scythian Age, and the Sarmatian period. I shouldn't call it the age. It wasn't really an age. It was just sort of a... But the point being is that there's been a long history of occupation in that area, and with the Mennonites sort of being the latest. And it's probably not as Mennonite-y as it was before, you know what I mean? I mean, things have a way, sort of, in this modern world, I feel. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Geology, one of my favorite things. So we were having some discussions about the geology of Mexico and what makes the zone of silence weird and why there would be strangeness in that particular spot. So this area, I believe, or maybe it's this area. I think it might be this area. This is Chihuahua. I think it's in here. But my point is, because I do have a point, believe it or not, is that if we scroll over, we have this nice little key that tells us what these different colors mean. I'm not going to read them. But what I am going to tell you is we have really old rock colliding with really new rock. So we have the old and the new sort of coming together. Perhaps that has something to do with it. I don't really know. But if you're wondering how that happens, by the way, I have a nice little slide here. This is the splitting of continents from Pangaea to the present. So 200 million years ago, this is what the Earth looked like. And then things started to shift. And they're still shifting. There's a huge rift in Africa. Like Africa is basically breaking apart in one spot. There's going to be an ocean there when it finally meets the sea. So we can see it starts to separate. Let me go back just a little bit. So you can see we have the old... Actually, where does it happen? I'm being a doofus. I guess it would be right here. It looks like right here is when there was like they were sort of squished together. That was not nearly as informative as I thought it would be. I apologize. It made sense at the time I saved it. This is another geology map for your viewing pleasure. It will be in the links. A lot of stuff I look at, I just sort of do a cursory pass, and I leave it for other people to go through more thoroughly if they desire. If not, that's okay too. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. So this is a little bit more in-depth geology, and it's got more, we can see more stuff. It's a little more complicated than just old and new. But now we were talking about last week, we discussed animals that we did not know existed, and I've discovered an animal that I did not, maybe I knew it existed, but let's check it out.
Banana rice cake. Squishy.
Look at that thing. Eating this little,
Sweet little creature. Oh my goodness.
oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Oh, you got you squeaky in there. Good morning. Completely new thing. Oh, wow, you didn't even hesitate.
So,
Look at me.
these are kinkajous. They've been rescued. I believe they're in permanent captivity. I'm not sure. I didn't really investigate, but this woman seems to take very good care of them. I don't think they're just pets. I do believe it's some sort of rehab place. But they give them candy because they eat a lot of honey out in the wild. They find honeycombs and they rah, 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 rah. So they give them candy as a treat, as sort of like to fill in their diet. But I just think these things are just the cutest. I was like, what? The kinkajou. Yep. And now you know. Going back to Mexico, this week I was cleaning out my closet and drawers, which I do basically every week because I have too many clothes. So it becomes a mess very quickly. But I was going through and I found a shirt that a student had given me. And the student was from Oaxaca, Mexico. And the top of it was embroidered and just incredibly beautiful. Mexican embroidery is really quite... Oh, sirens. I hear sirens. So, after the Spanish conquest of Mexico, Catholic nuns kept their churches provided with white work. This term is used for textiles where stitching is the same color as the foundation fabric. Usually white linen includes the technique of deshilado, or drawn thread work. With deshilado, selected threads are pulled from the ground fabric. The rest are bound and reinforced with decorative stitching. As in Spain, drawn thread work was much used to embellish white linen, christening gowns and bonnets, wedding shirts, altar cloths, surplices for choir boys, priestly albs, and other religious garments. This is like an altar cloth. We can see it's got little people in it. There's a monkey, birds. Here's some more. This is really kind of just show and tell. Just a whole other aspect of art that we sometimes don't think about. Like we think of art, we think of paintings, right? Sculptures. And sometimes we forget about textiles and how much history fabric can hold. The creation of the fabric, the creation of the thread that goes into the fabric, the coloring of said fabric. It's a Mobius strip of interesting stuff. Okay, so. And then speaking of embroidery, I closed it out. But that shirt that you saw at the very end there, that's like the shirt that the student gave me. So this is embroidery. This is not from Mexico. This is from, I don't know, we'll go back and find out. This is a little girl's dress. But it is just absolutely enchanting, is it not? It's got a little panel here so the child can move. The sleeves aren't restrictive. It's shaped at the top. That's a stunning dress. It's American. It's from 1750. So in 1750, a wealthy family had their beautiful little girl dressed in that running around, because this is not something that like the normal people would have worn. I mean, there's no other way really to put it, but yeah, that's about it. Okay. Part 2. We're moving into part 2. Are you excited? I know you're excited. I know I am. Because I got stuff like this. Blam! These are pictures from, I should tell you before I... This is a Briarcliff College album from 1950. So Briarcliff Manor is kind of like down the street a ways, maybe like an hour. And these pictures were taken at that college. And I want you to look at them for a minute and tell me what you think of immediately. So in the first picture, we have somebody that has an animal print on them, draped on them, with a cardboard sign that says Wildcat. The picture's in black and white. There's a cowboy on a wooden horse. And we have an Indian girl with some lassos. Here we have some blackface. Not cool. Check out those hairdos on this particular group. This is another picture that makes me think of something specific, but it's really the first one, I think. This one, there's a cardboard sign that says 3 pigeons. Everybody's dressed in revolutionary garb. Here we have some little kids doing a farm scene. This is what the college looked like. I don't know if it's still there. I was thinking of Wes Anderson. This is something that I feel like would have inspired him. If he saw this picture, he'd be like, wow, I really like that. Because it's very Wes Anderson-y. Now this week I was going on the internet looking for stuff about where I live, because I also like to know about the history of where I'm residing. And there's a bank that's 2 blocks away. And it looks like this. On the inside, it used to look like this, with that huge stained glass window and these chandeliers with these beautiful bulbs at the bottom. I don't even know how to explain them. And every single one of these little areas had a bulb. Like, it was just illuminated marble and stained glass. This is the back area where the safe is. We can see lots of wrought iron, which is quite fancy. This is the stained glass window. This is what it looks like from a different angle. So like when you walked in, this is what you would have seen. And you would have walked over to your area. But this is actually after, let me go back, after they removed this glass. So this glass was the first thing that got removed. See, that top part is gone. And then it doesn't look like that anymore. The whole inside is stripped. I don't know what happened to those chandeliers. Somebody probably bought that stained glass piece. All that marble's gone. It just makes me mad. This is Dutchess County Historical Society yearbook. If anybody's watching this that's local, I don't think so. I think everybody that watches me is not local, which is honestly for the better. I prefer it that way. I'd prefer that you not know me and my boring life. We just meet each other for dates. Dates like this, where I talk to you about stuff that I find interesting. Some cool pictures in here. Just kind of fun to poke around. Now, if we think about it, these pictures are 100 years ago. People in a horse and buggy. Now we've got cars that can drive themselves. In a very short amount of time. If there's a wooden structure from 500,000 years ago, why would we just remain all primitive? I think societies come together and come apart. This is fulgurite. Fulgurite is when lightning strikes sand or soil that has silica in it, and it fuses together and creates something that looks like this. So this is sand that has been struck by lightning. And then somebody wrote, and they're being funny, Reese Witherspoon is a liar, liar, pants on fire. And they said, somebody explain it to me, please. In the movie Sweet Home Alabama, Reese's husband would put metal rods into the sand before or during lightning storms. Then afterwards, he would dig up these glass structures and sell them at the shop. In the movie, the glass structures were much better looking and polished. So in the movie, they look like this. This picture, you can see it's all shiny and polishy. But the reality is if you were to manipulate it in any way, it would crumble. It's too fragile. It's a temporary thing. Now, in the case of a nuclear weapon, you can actually get glass. So this week I learned a little bit more about Hvar. Hvar is a port and resort town on the Croatian island of Hvar. Yachts fill its harbor in summer. Ferries connect the town with the several Pekleni islands offshore. These are home to secluded beaches such as those around Zadrilica Bay, as well as rocky coves and pine forests. Let's look at some of the images. It looks incredibly beautiful. So I got curious. I was like, I've never heard of Hvar. Here we have someone diving into the water. Now, the thing that got me going on Hvar and looking for it is there was a 7,000-year-old road that was discovered in Croatia's Adriatic depths. Now, if we look at where Hvar is, it's right here. Now, let me zoom out. Here we can see Italy. So it is to the east of the Adriatic Sea, right on the coast. A very beautiful area. Now, there's been a population there for about 11,000 years ago. So the Adriatic Sea, as we know it today, assumed its present form relatively recently. At the time of the last glacial maximum, around 18,000 BP, when sea levels were some 120 meters lower than today, the Adriatic's area was only half its size. The shallow northwestern part of the Adriatic basin was a wide steppe traversed by the river Po and its tributaries and bordered by Dinaric Mountains in the east and the Apennines in the west. So here, this is what the Adriatic Sea looked like. Initially, it was like this, and then you can see it filled. It's to where it is now. So what does that mean? Why do I bring that up? I bring that up because this whole area is undoubtedly was above the water not too long ago. And there's probably all kinds of settlement stuff in there. So, underwater road leads to ancient Hvar settlement. This is the article that got me going. The Hvar culture spread through the Adriatic coast 7,000 years ago. Newly discovered underwater settlements reveal the ancient relics they left behind. So there's a road, ceramic objects, flint knives. People that are making ceramic objects have enough time to make ceramic objects, which indicates sort of a society. So, and there's a very famous cave in there known as the Grapseva Cave. It's a site located on the southern part of the island of Hvar. Heavily excavated in the years after World War II, the cave established the Hvar culture as an early maritime society. Most famously, archaeologists found pottery here bearing the first known depiction of a boat in Europe. Full of stalactites and stalagmites, the cave has a large and small hall where scientists found numerous other examples of pottery, including dark ware patterned with ribbons and semicircles. As the Hvar often used looping shapes, scientists also found ceramics with complex spiral patterns painted in red, yellow, and brown. And then there were some more Neolithic settlements that were discovered. So there's lots of exciting stuff here. We have examples of the ceramics. We can see these are amphorae, very large. So these would have been filled with goods of some kind. Here we have a recreation of a grave. Here we have a person inside an amphorae, which was their grave. Here's a better picture of it. Fascinating. Now there's a settlement that was discovered in the 90s that was down here, the Saline Roman settlement. So it is thought that this connected to this, and it was just like one big piece of land that was occupied. Now, while I was looking at Havar, I found something else completely crazy. And this is something written by Mary Beth Edelson. Now, Mary Beth Edelson was a performance artist back in the 70s, early 80s. Now, what does that mean, performance artist? It means she did stuff and called it art. What does that mean? Let me explain. For some years, I had been attempting to make a pilgrimage to a goddess site. I had been doing private rituals in my art for some time, both outdoors in nature and in the studio. I could feed off them and hold them in my mind like totems, but I was still hungry. I needed to do my rituals in an actual prehistoric cave, to experience a Neolithic site where I could smell the earth, poke around in the soil, breathe the air, and know that the cave air had circulated through my body and become a part of me. To go to a prehistoric site became an obsession and represented the place to begin a new cycle. Numerous grants had not materialized, and the trip was long overdue. So I sold my car and bought the voyage. Before leaving New York, I researched 7 sites. She says she settles on Grepseva, the cave we were just talking about. So at daybreak, so she gets there, she gets to the island. Now they have to hike to the cave. At daybreak the next morning, we began the trip, climbing on and on while we and the heavy gear baked in the intense sun. At the top of the mountain, beyond the deserted village of Humak, we began our descent to the barely accessible cave. The climb down was a series of straight drops. What had once been a path was now an acre's mountain stone, obscuring the way to those familiar with it. Suddenly, the blue Adriatic stretched before us, and in the next moment we realized that we had reached the area around the cave. What an incredible location. The sea vista, a shelf of flat rock extending from the front of the cave, fruit and nut trees and berry bushes on either side. We could easily visualize the daily activities of the Neolithic inhabitants gathered there, talking, cooking, and sunning. So then she's like, okay, this is the cave. She kind of looks around. We have some pictures. There's some nakedness in the pictures, just so you know. This is her in the cave with the candles, doing her goddess thing. So she stayed in there for doing rituals for I guess for the whole day, and then at the end of the day went back down. And so she probably danced and said things, and it was interesting. I crawled into the space where, deep in one corner, crouching to examine a broken area and the black floor, I found pure red dark clay, which was the right consistency, moisture content, and texture to begin making a pot without further preparation. I wondered whether this blackened room could have been a kiln room. The clay ready to use could have been dried near the kiln and fired in the same place, a perfect setup. An indoor kiln would have driven out the dampness, the only aspect of the cave I found uncomfortable. So pretty interesting, right? And then you can look at more. Here's a picture she drew of the cave, which has been foreshortened to include detail. It is not to scale. I found that absolutely fascinating that this woman was like, I need to go to a prehistoric cave. I need to get in touch with my inner goddess. And then off she goes. It's pretty cool, right? We are almost in conspiracy land. But first I'm going to show you some stuff. Randomness, random new stuff. Thief of Belgian court jewels apprehended in New York, 1831. Group of manuscript documents relating to the theft of court jewels from the palace of the Prince of Orange in Brussels. On the night of September 25th, 1829, chests of court jewels were stolen from the palace of the Prince of Orange in Brussels. The value of the items taken was about $70 million in today's money. In 1831, an Italian man named Constant Polari, also known as Carrara, who had fled to New York City, was arrested there for the theft. And there's some more stuff about the theft. But could you imagine? Let's see if we Google him, if we get a picture of what he looks like. I wonder how he did it. I didn't look that up. No, we got nothing. Okay. This is a catalog from 1889, and it's a catalog of fountains. So if you're wealthy and kind of sitting around your vast estate, you could poke through and say, do I want a rock with a dolphin base? Or do I want a gargoyle octagon pan with fireman? Now, interestingly, I do believe that this company is the company that there's a fountain in town, the town that I live in, and it has a similar kind of vibe going on. I'm sure there probably weren't a whole lot of people that made them. I think it's probably a specialty item. While I was doing some of my medieval sleuthing, I like to look at medieval art, like a lot. This is a view of Rome, but it's written in the medieval style. And it too is foreshortened so that you can see the detail. I just find it absolutely enchanting, each of the little buildings. This is another thing I found. This is a monastery in Croatia, which I found when I was looking at stuff about Hvar. Some of the art is very dark and well preserved, and some of it is starting to flake and fade, which is kind of sad. Because look at this. This is incredible. Like the whole church is painted with saints, and this is a sea view, a woman riding a whale, holding a ship. All kinds of imagery. A dragon, maybe that's Satan, I'm not sure. But it really kind of caught my eye. And this is what the outside looks like. I've made this my screensaver because I love this picture so much. Now, speaking of churches and weirdness, this is a Baroque, so a little bit later than medieval, a Baroque pulpit from a church in a village in Lower Silesia, Poland. This is a pulpit that looks like a whale, so whoever was preaching would stand up in here in the whale's mouth. Pretty wild. Speaking of wild horses return to the Kazakh plain after centuries. Hold on just a second. Endangered wild horses have returned to the golden steppe of Kazakhstan for the first time in at least 200 years after decades-long efforts. The airlifts of 7 Przewalski's horses from Europe to the Central Asian country took place in early June in an operation run by the Prague Zoo. Researchers told the BBC that the horses are already doing well, 2 weeks in, roaming around the plains and even beginning the mating process. Zoo officials say it's a triumph of generations of conservation work. This is an endangered species returning to their ancestral lands, a species which went extinct in the wild in the 1960s, last seen in Mongolia, so it's just marvelous. A miracle. While the horses have been slowly reintroduced to Mongolia and China in recent decades, this operation marks the first time they are back in Kazakhstan. It is the last wild horse species on the planet, named after Russian explorer Nikolai Przewalski, who was the first to identify the horse for the European science community. The species originated millennia ago from the steppes of ancient Asia and was taken by researchers to Europe and North America in the 19th and 20th centuries, where populations were established in zoos. Some of them ended up in zoos in Munich and Prague, and it's their descendants that have now been reintroduced. Cultural artifacts show people in the country's north were riding and using the horses for food for at least 2,000 years before records of domesticated horses in Europe. Kind of cool. I like that story. So they flew from, there were 2 different flights. One flew from Berlin, one flew from Prague. That must have been a really long flight. Now, I've decided that we are going to, next time, I think I'm going to do a deep dive on India. Now, why do I say that? I say that because, well, so I walk to work, and it's like 1.5 miles, so I usually listen to something while I'm walking, so I can learn and walk. So I'm exercising and learning at the same time. It's wonderful. And I've been listening to some stuff about India, and I don't think there's enough attention paid to India. Now, these are 2 mysterious ancient sites separated by more than 5,000 kilometers. So this first site is in Cambodia, and the second site, this site, is in India. Both sites are known for their 1,000 lingas rivers. A linga or lingam is a symbol for divine generative energy, especially a phallus or a phallic object as a symbol of Shiva. Were there any connections between these sites? Were they created by the same people? Were they able to carve underwater, or were they submerged after they were carved? So lots of questions about this, right? But I think the answer of this is a little bit simpler, and that is that the lingas were made to bless the water on the way to the temples or palaces like Angkor Wat. So there would have been water flowing to the temple, and the water would have been decorated. The stones in the water would have been decorated with these symbols to bless the water as it comes through. Someone else says maybe they're gold sluices. That could be. And someone says, how has the flowing water not eroded the underwater carvings? 1,000 years ago, South Indian kings and its culture extended unto Laos throughout Southeast Asia. And Indian culture is very famous for its stone carvings, especially Lord Shiva. All these places are dotted with Hindu carvings. These places have amazing, like truly amazing stone carvings. And this person is saying perhaps they were used as a school assignment by the same carving school. So the students would carve the rocks, but the rocks would also be blessing the water. So I guess it's... But then someone else says, no, gold. It's for gold sluices. Someone says, may I ask what is unwritten or unexplained here? They have been studied extensively by archaeologists and anthropologists. Well, I don't disagree with this person, but to the average person walking around, like, I've never heard of these places. I didn't hear about these places until I saw this Reddit post, and I went, oh, what's that? So I don't think it's, as much in the consciousness. Now, Praveen Mohan is the guy I've been listening to.
The pineal gland has tiny little cilia,
This is
extensions all around.
Hey guys, archaeologists found an ancient wire in the Chandi Kimpulan temple in Indonesia. Yes, this is the actual picture.
So this guy has a lot of subscribers, but rightfully so. He does a lot of research on old India sites. He gets a little into speculative territory, maybe perhaps a little too far, but I think there's a lot of truths in the stuff that he's talking about. And I mean, like ancient technology, a society that was more evolved than what we acknowledge currently. Just fascinating. So you can check him out. So here are some more pictures of the lingas and what they look like. And they're very sharply carved. I mean, it's very well defined. There are also carvings of bull. There's a bull, another bull, another bull, a person dancing. During the civil war in Cambodia, most of the Hindu symbols were destroyed, but the Sahasrara remained untouched thanks to the dense forest, which still makes it accessible to only a few who are determined to reach it. So, it's kind of sad that there was a civil war and most of the Hindu symbols were destroyed. There's probably a lot of history that went bye-bye that we'll never know of. But let's talk about the Shiva Linga for a minute. The Linga, the symbol that we were just looking at that's on the rocks. The word Linga means the form. We are calling it the form because when the unmanifest began to manifest itself, or in other words, when creation began to happen, the first form that it took was that of an ellipsoid. So where's the part I wanted to talk about? Indian culture has been among the few cultures on this planet where for thousands of years the whole population was focused only on the ultimate well-being of the human being. The moment you were born in India, your life was not about your business, your wife, your husband, or your family. Your life was only about mukti. The whole society was structured like this. In this context, many kinds of powerful devices were created in this culture. Torlingas were created as very powerful tools in this direction. It is a powerful experience to be in the presence of such forms. They have tremendous power because they were consecrated and created in a certain way, not just using human capabilities, but the forces of nature. There are only 12 Torlingas. They are located at certain geographically and astronomically significant points. These points are subject to certain forces in the existence. A long time ago, people with a certain level of perception very carefully calibrated these spaces and fixed those points according to the celestial movement. Now, the part that I wanted to bring up, and I'm not finding it, is that the lingas become a Torus when you enter that state of worship. And what do I mean by that? I'm talking about this. This is a Torus. Now, there are some people that think that the Torus is the shape of the universe, and that's why there's expansion. So as we can see, some of these are expanding. At the very bottom here, we see they're expanding, and then we see at the top they're shrinking. So there's this expanding and then shrinking, expanding and then shrinking. The toroidal universe. This article outlines a theory that explains why the universe isn't expanding evenly in all directions, and it relates to the geometry of space-time. Most scientists believe that space is flat, unless it is being curved by the presence of matter, which results in gravity. The toroidal universe theory proposes that the universe may not actually be expanding, but only appears to be so because space-time dynamically flows with the geometry of a torus. So the universe may be simultaneously expanding and contracting. And And the toroidal universe theory also explains why time only flows in one direction. So this is a lengthy article that talks a little bit about the universe that would have no beginning and no end. It would just keep going forever. And there was one thing that I wanted to bring up. Here we go. Then, in a flash of inspiration, the two images came together as pictured below, and we realized that the universe had toroidal geometry. This is not a new idea, but it was new to us, and we knew it was significant. Torsion, twisting energy within the central vortex of the torus, prevents the inflowing energy matter from forming a singularity, so it can emerge anew from the top of the torus in an eternal creation cycle of creation, existence, and dissolution, or Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So actually, there are ancient religions where their concept of what the universe is like from like a long time ago is really not that much different than that. Is the universe likely to be shaped like a torus? And this person who is they have a BSc in physics. The problem is, to the extent that we can observe the universe, the geometry remains flat because it's so big. Perhaps the universe does have curvature, but if so, then the universe is vastly bigger than we could have ever even imagined, as the universe would be so big that on a local level, the entire Hubble sphere, we can detect no curvature, even if curvature is present on larger scales. Fascinating stuff. Now, American scientists did an article not too long ago where they said that the shape of the universe, that there are 10 possibilities of what the universe could be shaped like. Now, this article, super duper dense, not going to go through it. Let me read a little part of it. No matter where we have been in the universe, if we picked a point nearby and considered all of the points within a distance of 2 feet from that point, we then observe a three-dimensional ball of points. Cosmologists believe this is true throughout the universe. That special property leads them to conclude that the universe is three-manifold. But which three-manifold is it? Trying to determine which three-manifold describes the universe is a daunting challenge. Mathematicians long ago concluded that, as with two manifolds, there are an infinite number of these shapes. And it goes on and on and on. This is like way over my head. Completely way over my head. The observable universe. 92 trillion light years in volume. 13,787 billion. Wait, million. No, 13,787 million. Right? Yeah. Holy cow. As predicted in the holograph universe theory, what we can see of the observable universe appears to be toroidal in shape. This aligns with the idea posed that the universe has a black hole, a white hole center. Now there is... I closed it down. I think it was in the previous one. It's good enough for me to go looking for it. History. I'm probably not going to be able to find it. Oh, I did find it. A variety of recent experiments examining everything from supernovae to cosmic microwave radiation have explored this mystery. A recent study measured the angular power spectrum of the cosmic microwave background radiation using high-altitude balloons over Antarctica. There was a peak in the power spectrum that the researchers believe can only be explained by the existence of cold, dark matter, relatively large, slow-moving particles that do not emit light in a Euclidean universe. Wow, right? So there are these balloons floating over Antarctica, and they suddenly get a peak. Like their little readings go... The scientists are like, why? What's that about? We don't know. Now we're going to get really crazy pants. We're on the final stretch here. We're about to close it up soon. Let's watch this TikTok video for a minute.
But round circular, there was a light in the room that I simply don't know where it came from because there were no light fixtures whatsoever. But the table was just some kind of a metal table with a pad on it, except it was a different type of metal. And all of a sudden, monitors start popping out from the walls.
Okay, now, this piqued my attention because I have a reoccurring dream that's exactly like he's describing. So then I get all excited, and I'm like, ooh, maybe I'm an Andromedan. But then...
Out of nowhere. Turns out that this is their holographic technology, all this instrumentation. And all of these things were showing me pictures and of things of going on that were going on inside my body. At one point, Visayas reached under the table, pulled out something which looked like a little yarmulke. It was metallic that had a hole in the center. He placed it on my head, and instantly a monitor directly in front of me pulled out of the wall and started showing me scenes, like movie clips, except they were scenes from lifetimes. And as I'm watching this,
I have that too.
I am having a profound emotional effect.
But then...
Watching this. And I know that it's real for me. And I share that with you because as you're exercising discernment, those of you who are here just exploring, trying to figure it out, you are soul first. Okay, the physicality is the last part of you.
I believe he's onto
soul
something
first.
with that.
And the soul is far wiser than the body will ever be. And I know that. Okay, so that this was very real and is real for me.
Okay, so he meets the Andromedans in this round room with a table. And then, but then there's an interview from 2022 where he talks about his time on an 800-mile wide Xenatian Andromedan mothership. Learn about their fifth dimensional lifestyle, diet, food, replicators, med beds, AI technology, and holographic room. Alex will also share how he survived the targeted attacks against him and much more. You can watch the article. You can watch the interview here for free. Oh, all right. We're not going to share that link. But the point I want to talk about is that he went too far with it. You know, like he had to make it super interesting. And these weird things that happen to us that we can't explain, sometimes they're not really super interesting. Okay, I had a dream I was in a round room and there was a bunch of beings in it. And there were monitors and I saw my past lives. Like, why does it have to be aliens? Why does it have to be Andromedans? It could be a shared dream space. It could be another dimension that we enter. Who knows? Mysteries abound. We've gone to Socks before. We like Socks. Socks is amazing. Socks is a non-linear journey through distant territories of human imagination. So it's an online magazine founded and edited by Maria Bruna Fabrizi and Fosco Lucarelli, two Italian architects currently living in Paris. So that's Socks. But I found this. This is from a video game that I didn't know existed. So the video game Glider was published in 1988. It was a Macintosh video game. And it's structured on a section of a house with a series of interconnected rooms without inhabitants. And you throw a paper plane and you try to keep it going. A paper plane must fly through the section avoiding household objects and furniture and continue its flight without colliding with the floor. Several objects can provide help, like heating vents and coolers, while the movement of others can cause trouble to the flight. Ordinary furniture becomes wonders, while the domestic mundane turns into an endless interior landscape filled with hidden puzzles. Pixelated graphics allows a pretty detailed description of the interior environment. So these graphics are These graphics are from 1994. And that's just really cool. It just has a certain look to it, right? Like, when I was working as a financial planner a long time ago, more like an assistant. I wasn't licensed or anything. I just worked in an office, but it was financial planning. I did like mutual funds, bonds, setting up IRAs, whatever. But there was a lot of downtime, and the internet, like AOL Messenger, was like the new big thing, and I had unlimited internet access, and I played a lot of games that looked just like this. Or in the same spirit, I should say, because this is very unique and unusual. I haven't seen anything like that. Also from Socks, some art from George Wildsall. He's a Baltimore-based artist who primarily produces illustrations and comic-like sequences of drawings, often accompanied by written text in the form of short poems. His works blend mundane objects and settings with surreal plots and visual associations, resulting in poetic yet slightly disturbing scenarios. So here we have some liminal spaces. I have to walk through the tunnel for long stretches at a time to get to the bathroom, the machinery closet, the fuse box. I can walk for 30 minutes, 1 hour, 90 minutes. I started seeing these things everywhere, flitting around my peripheral vision like shopping bags in a dust devil. I called them ghosts. I don't know another word that could describe them. So here we have, in a single comic, a whole story. And it draws you in, and you're like, well, what's happening? What's this person talking about? Here's another one. Summer 1998, we lived in a car and slept on the beach. We ate sharks and drank from the ocean. We were temples forged from precious metal, and we were beautiful. This one doesn't have any words at all. There's some lockers, garbage can with balloons in it, a phone off the hook, an eye looking out through some fabric, and someone walking down a long hall. So this will be in the links, this one, so you can look at all of the stuff that he's done. This one is probably my favorite. So before we look at some stuff, I found this book, Mall World. Our solar system, locked in a force field and towed to an uninhabited parallel universe, occupies its time when trying not to escape at a shopping center the size of a planet. Written by Somtau Sukarichkul. Let's see if there's any reviews. I stumbled upon it and bought this for $2. My life will never be the same. Mall World is a collection of 7 short stories, all taking place in the same universe. So this person gets really excited. But then, story number 7. The main dude practices anti-grav surfing and is interrupted by a Bar Julie and an old friend who want him to convince his family to open Copuland, a sexual theme park. Evidently, the Council of Mall World thinks this place is too crass. At one point, he tours Copuland and views all the odd sexual buildings. There's even a creature called a porcupine who... Oh God, it's weird, okay? This chapter has a lot of sexual things in it, and it's very weird. Porcupines are people covered in various sexual orifices, allowing for some weird orgies. You have to pay extra for a private session. Our main hero accidentally falls in love with one. Then Copuland starts flooding, a giant shark is involved, and... ... So you guys know my fascination with Mall World. I have a whole world that I visit in my dream life that I go back to again and again and again. And there are places that I've never been to in real life, and there's people that I've never met in real life. And we all hang out, and sometimes there's a plot, sometimes there's not a plot. It's always interesting. Let's look at some pictures, shall we? We have some pictures from hummus. I was looking at a specific thing. Where'd it go? Was it this? Not very well prepared, am I? Nope. Not well prepared at all. Nope. Not even close. Alright, guys, I messed that all up. I think I had something in mind, but I flubbed it. I don't know which one of these it was. Was it this one? It wasn't, but in keeping with Mongolia and Kazakhstan, these are the people that would have ridden those horses, or eaten them, or used them in their daily life. Although I don't know that they were domesticated. So they probably just would have eaten them as food. Interesting to think about. So, it's Sunday. Tomorrow's Monday. It's back to work. Things are all kinds of crazy at my job. It's graduation or moving up ceremony was on Friday, so now there's 2 days left of school, and they're both half days. And it's a little crazy right now. I gotta say, it's a little crazy, but I like this job a lot better than my previous job. I feel more useful, and I feel like it's healthier for me. So, and you can probably see that on my face. I probably look a little bit better than I have in quite some time. I'm eating better, exercising, just trying to take care of myself mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. But it's like I work on one and like all the rest fall to the floor. So like physically I'm good, I'm like working out, but like emotionally I'm isolating and not talking to anybody. So I think everybody probably does that, right? Like where you're just, I guess it's all about balance. I hate it. Okay, so always a pleasure to see everybody. I'll see you again soon. I apologize for the breathless delivery. I'm still suffering from a very, very, very bad sickness. I don't even know what I had, but it was bad, bad, bad. But I'm better now. And I'll see you soon.